Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm audible.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get started. Okay. Uh, so good morning, good evening, everyone. Let me know if you can. So I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, great. So before we proceed, I'll quickly introduce myself. Okay, and then I would also like to know a little bit about the audience also, uh, in terms of which stage of your career you're in, and if you have actually prepared some resumes and you have actually applied for some companies, and if you've got some feedback also, correct? So quick introduction. So today's session is going to be about how to showcase your AI projects in an interview. Okay. uh, Let me minimize this. Yeah. So how to showcase your AI projects in interviews, and also how to avoid the common mistakes. Okay. So this is an important aspect because I see a lot of people whom I interview. In fact, today also I interviewed two candidates, and some of them are from IITs as well, right? So you need to be cautious about not just doing the work, but also in showcasing your work on your resume in a proper manner, correct? I'll also talk about what are the common mistakes that are made by most candidates. I'll show you some resumes also, in terms of what kind of mistakes are generally made so that you can avoid those mistakes. Okay. So, quick introduction about myself. I'm Vijayender, and I have, over 20 years of IT experience, right? I've worked in a variety of companies, a lot of companies, spanning 20 years. And I've been a developer. I've been I've done all the roles literally possible, right? Starting from being a developer till being a project lead. And again, I've done my MBA too. So I've also got into strategy consulting, and have, most recent corporate stint I did was as a director of engineering at HighRadius, after which I started Alumnex, right? So, right now, we work as part of Alumnex. We again, and we work on some projects in AI. One on agriculture, another one is on event management. So in my past, I've worked on companies like Deloitte and HighRadius. So during the course of my entire career, I have reviewed hundreds of resumes. I've hired hundreds of people, and sadly, I also had to fire a few people, right? But each time we hired someone, there was always been a learning in terms of how we look at resumes, and what are the qualities that we look for when we look at candidates just by looking at their resumes. Okay. So that's why a resume is very important, because it kind of is a reflection of your personality, right? Because the interview is when we actually talk to the candidate, but before the interview itself, we form an impression of the candidate when we look at the resume. Okay. So some resumes are very badly written, very poorly, have spelling mistakes and all that. But I think in today's session, we are not going to talk about those kind of topics, right? How to write a good resume, I think, is in a different discussion. Today's topic is going to be focused more on how do we present your AI projects to the interviewers in the best possible manner. Okay, so I will actually show you some resumes of AI engineers and data science professionals, and I'll show you how you can avoid some of the mistakes that they are making. Okay, so before we go forward, right? Maybe we'll just spend maybe a 5 minutes or something. Again, talking about who is the session for. Okay, and then I will also try to understand if the audience is in sync with what these expectations are, right? And if anybody wants to ask any questions or share some thoughts or something, you can do that right now. Okay, so this session is basically for students or for fresh graduates with some AI/ML coursework or with some kind of project work, correct? This is also for job seekers, who are applying for data AI, data science, or machine learning roles, right? And this is also for professionals transitioning into AI/ML from other domains, right? So again, more often than not, the rules apply for everyone. The rules are the same, right? It's not that you will have different rules for fresh graduates versus those who are already working professionals. The rules apply the same. It might just vary depending on the intensity of how you apply some of these concepts might vary depending upon what stage of uh, career you are in, right? And we'll talk about this in more detail as we proceed. So I think someone has put in a message. Okay. So before we proceed, can we have, again, just quickly. Let's just quickly have a quick, 5 minutes kind of a thing to understand how many of you are freshers, just still not applied for any, just like completing some coursework and applying and preparing your resume. How many of you are like that? You want to give a thumbs up? Maybe I think, is there some kind of a thumbs up in this? Yeah. So is there any emoticons or anything in this Zoom? Because in Google Meet we have it. Uh, okay. So is every one of you, someone with fresher background or just out of college? Is that the kind of background, all of you? You can just give a thumbs up, maybe in the emoji if you're just a fresher. So I understand what is the composition of the people in this audience. Okay. So Parthu is saying he has experience in data engineering. Okay, good. And what about the others? So can I assume that all the others are pretty much having, just coursework and just trying to, get into this field, right? Okay. Monica is a fresher. Okay. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay, fine. So again, in the interest of time, let's move on. Okay. So like I said, the rules are pretty much the same irrespective of whether you're a student or a fresh graduate, or you are someone who is, you know, uh, already working and moving on or transitioning into this space from a different field, right? Like you may be a Java developer or you may be a someone who is into VLSI and all that, and you want to move into this field, uh, then also the same rules apply. Okay. So one of the most important things about again why how you present your projects in AI, right? Um, so the most important thing again today's world is your projects. Okay, people are laying less emphasis on what kind of college you're from, or they're not worried too much about uh, how many years of experience also you have sometimes. Okay, they're more interested in have you done relevant work, have you had any real world projects on your resume which you can showcase. Okay, so that is becoming increasingly important. Can someone tell me why are projects very important? Maybe you can just unmute. You can keep it interactive. Okay, so it need not be only me talking. Can someone tell me why are projects important? Anyone? Why are people thinking projects are important? Why is it that earlier projects were not very important, but now they are important? Can someone tell? You can just unmute and speak. That's fine if you want to talk. Yeah. So the reason is a lot of times people, it's easy in today's world with generative AI. It's easy to get the code from Claude or ChatGPT, correct? So if you want to do something, if you want to build and implement a specific functionality, you can always ask Claude or ChatGPT, and it gives you the code, correct? But the point is, if you want to solve a problem, right? If you want to solve a problem, then ChatGPT or Claude may not be the most suitable tool to get you there. Getting what I'm saying? So a lot of times, again, people believe vibe coding, correct? So vibe coding can help you build projects to a certain extent, but afterwards you get stuck, right? Now, if you have built a project till 80% and not completed it with respect to deployment, it's as good as the project is not done, right? Because nobody wants a half-baked project, right? So the fact that you have done a project end to end, deployed it, and you are showcasing it means that you have actually spent time in understanding what is the problem you're solving. You spend time in working with Claude or ChatGPT to write the code, test the code, and deploy it, and then showcase it. Correct? So that's why projects are most important in today's world, because AI again is started just few years ago, and most of the people are having similar kind of experience, right? So the people who know versus people who don't know can be clearly segregated based on projects they work on, because it gives the interviewer a chance to ask specific questions based on projects that have been done. Okay, because today if you ask any theory, most of the people will answer theory, right? That's what you have seen. If you ask what is overfitting, what is underfitting, they will all answer the questions. Okay, because they all memorize them. Okay, but when it comes to real world applications, right? Like for example, if I give a scenario and I say, how would you kind of prevent underfitting of that? Okay, so let's say stock price prediction, right? I'll say, which model will you use, right? And how will you prevent underfitting, or how will you prevent overfitting, correct? Then you can only answer that question if you have done the project related to that, somewhat similar project. Okay, so or if you already have projects which kind of illustrate that concept, you can showcase that, right? So that's why projects are really important. So recruiters look for clarity, impact, and ownership, right? So primarily, if somebody is recruiting you, they want to hire someone who will get the work done, right? So nobody wants to hire someone just for the sake of it, right? Because they have to pay some money for that, right? So people look for recruiters, I mean, typically look for somebody who's clear on what they are trying to do and should be able to clearly talk about what they're trying to do. Okay. What is the impact they have given? Okay. Now, I see a lot of resumes where people just say, uh, I have done 10 things, but what is the outcome? What have you got out of those doing those 10 things, right? That is important. And recruiters also look for ownership, right? So by ownership, what it means is that if I place you on a particular project, right? And suppose that project went into difficulties, okay? So you're not able to move forward because there are some bugs, and you are trying to use ChatGPT, you're using Claude, you're using Gemini, everything you're using, but it's not moving forward. Okay. So in such cases, what do you do? Right? Typically, someone who doesn't have ownership, right, will just leave it there, will not notify the managers or will not inform anyone, right? So in that case, what happens? The timeline, suppose it is set at 18th of November, and you are already on 17th of November or 18th of October, and you're already on 17th of October. But if you don't have ownership, right? If you lack ownership, you don't escalate to management or your team lead on 17th, when the status review is checked or the client asks, if you come and say that, it's not done, and you give all your reasons, then it's a big red flag, right? Because there's no time to implement it. So ownership is all about saying, I'll go and get it done, come what may, or ask for help or raise the red flag. Okay. Say that I'm not able to do this. I need help. Right. That's important. So clarity, impact, and ownership, very top attributes that most recruiters look for. Correct. And when they review the resume also, they try to gauge these three attributes of every candidate. Okay. Is the candidate clear about what they're trying to do? Or are they just trying to just say some mumbo jumbo? Okay. So I'll just show you one of the resumes, so which I interviewed recently, where we are on this one. So this is one resume which I have seen, where the candidate talks about quantum reservoir computing, correct? So I don't know, some quantum reservoir framework uses quantum noise as a resource for processing time series data. So honestly, I don't understand what's going on here. Okay, I've not worked on this, right? Maybe that candidate has done something, but when I asked to explain it, she was not able to explain it, right? Probably again, this is one of the don'ts, okay, where people just put some fancy projects which they can't explain clearly, correct? And if on your resume you have something that you can't explain clearly, then it's a red flag for me, because why did you put it in the first place, right? If you're not clear about it, why did you put it? So what is the candidate tomorrow when you come and work on the team? You will not be able to clearly explain what you are trying to do. So very important to be clear, clarity of thought, clarity of how you explain your thought process is important, right? Most important thing about data scientists today is not about doing the work, right? Because the work will be done by the ChatGPT and Claude. They will write the code anyways. The most important thing is how you are going to explain your projects, explain how you are, what you're going to do in a most clear manner. Now, impact is again, what is the outcome of this? Why should you do this project? What happens if you do this project, right? How is it beneficial to the larger goals, right? So your project should convey that, right? Otherwise, there's no meaning, right? Why are you doing this project? Now, strong project storytelling can outweigh lack of experience. So this is one of the points I mentioned, that if you have good, strong projects, right, people are willing to look at, overlook your lack of experience. So you might be a 2025 grad, or you may be a fresher with 1 year experience, but if the role is demanding 2 years or 4 years, 3 years, then they can still consider it if you have a good project on your resume and you also have a good ability to communicate what you're trying to do. Okay. So that's why again this slide is dedicated to primarily projects, okay, in terms of why they're important and what are the areas where you need to be focusing on. So the most important thing again is visual is the balance scale, right? The theory versus practical projects. So you need to be, having again, most of them should be practical projects, right, which you have worked on, where you have actually deployed them, right? So some of the projects can be more for an academic exercise, correct? So you've completed some Coursera course where you worked on a project, and you know the theory per se, right? You know what's happening in that project, but maybe you haven't really deployed it, you haven't even run it, you haven't even downloaded the data set, but you know the concepts, right? So that is more to showcase that you have done some project, but it's not really counted unless you actually do it, right? So practical projects are the ones where you actually write the code and fetch the data, do that entire process, right? Of suppose you're doing a data pre-processing, exploratory data analysis, training the model, building the model, evaluating the model, deploying it. So if you're doing that whole thing, then that's more valuable, correct? So most of the times, again, typically you should have 80% of practical projects, 20% of theory projects, right? So that's kind of where uh, it sets a good balance between both of them. So most often than not, people want to look at practical projects only because that is where you have actually solved some problem, right? And you have done something on your own. Now, next slide. Any questions here so far? Anybody? So yeah, you can just put on the chat, okay, messages if you have anything. Okay. So the next one is the interviewer's mindset, right? So typically, what would an interviewer look for, right? Uh, can you explain your problem clearly, right? So this is what I mentioned in the previous slide as well, right? If you are working on a project, you should be able to first talk about what is the problem you're solving. Okay. So, like for example, in the example again I showed you last time, this particular project, right? The candidate has written a project which looks nice, right? But the candidate has no clue what is it supposed to solve, right? So the candidate is saying we built a quantum reserve frame which is supposed to take some time series data, right? And it is taking diverse quantum noise models and executing experiments on IBM quantum hardware via Qiskit and all. But what is the problem that is solving? Are we predicting something as an output? Are we getting the predicting the temperature? So apparently there was supposed to be time series data of temperature at a 1 minute interval for the past 10 years. Correct? So that is the data. But the point is, the candidate is not able to explain what is this problem solving? What is the solution solving? What problem is it solving? So if that doesn't happen, and I don't really care about whether you use quantum reservoir framework or whatever other framework you used, correct? I care about If you're not clear about the problem you're solving, then that means you're not a good data scientist. So I don't want to hire that person. Okay. That's the first step, right? So I'm not even looking at what models you used. The first and foremost thing is, can you explain your problem clearly? Correct. So that's important. So the interviewer's mindset sets, there itself I can figure out, is the candidate bluffing or is the candidate actually done the work? If you're not able to explain the problem clearly, there are two possibilities. Either the candidate is really not able to explain the problem but has done the work, or the candidate has not done anything there, just trying to bluff it on the resume. So interviews can easily catch this. So if you need to practice, you need to practice this, how you explain the problem. Because if it's on your resume, there's a 99% chance that it will be asked if it's at the top, right? So in this candidate's thing, it's at the top, right? The first resume experience is that, and that's the only experience, or pretty much second experience is also there. But the second one is not data science project. The first one is data science project. So 99% it will be asked. So if it is asked and you're not able to explain it, then there's no point. It's a missed opportunity. So make sure you know what exactly is the problem you're solving. So in that case, the candidate should have said, the problem we're trying to solve is to predict the temperature based on a time series data of last 10 years with a 1 minute interval for a particular geography using the whatever that quantum reservoir framework. Okay. So I know exactly what is the problem she's trying to solve, right? And then the second thing is, do you understand your data and model choices, right? So next thing I look at is, okay, now I know. So I think Adil is asking a question. I'm totally beginner. I can also join this project course. I think Vaishnavi can answer that. Coming back, so do you understand your data and model choices? So here, what we are saying is, um, okay, now it told me your problem, right? Okay, you want to do time series, you want to do temperature prediction for a given geography in the upcoming period of time, correct? But I also want to know what data you considered in the past. Okay. So I'll tell you some other example also, another resume I'll show you here, where the candidate has not been able to kind of justify what data they are using. Okay. So when I asked, not this one, yeah, I think this one only. Yeah, in this one, I also asked the question in terms of what is the data you're using, and she said it is the 1 minute interval temperature for the past 10 years, correct? So I asked a simple question, what was the total number of data points that you had considered, correct? Now, if you do a quick math, you can figure it out, right? So 1 minute interval means you have 60 data points an hour multiplied by 24 hours, right? Multiplied by that's 1 day, 30, that's 1 month, or multiplied by 365, you get for 1 year, multiplied by 10, you will get some number. Now, when I ask the question, what is the total number, you should be able to give a number to it, right? Is it 1 lakh, 1.5 lakh, 2 lakhs, 2.5 lakhs? So what people do is they're not able to give that data, right? They say it's a large amount of data, correct? So large and small are very ambiguous statements, especially from a data scientist perspective, right? If a normal person says, it is large number of data points, less number of data points, it's okay. But the data scientist should be accurate. They should be able to say 1.5 lakh records, right? Or 1.25. It's okay. It can be 10,000 here and there. But trying to gauge, are you even worked on the project, correct? So these all are clues that helps me understand, right? Typically, people who bluff projects typically cannot answer that question, right? Or they say something, they try to bluff that number also. So sometimes people will say 10 lakh records, right? But it's easy to catch that also, because if you do the quick math, you can figure it out. It will not be more than 2 lakhs or something like that. So don't bluff it, right? So the best way is again, understand your data, because if you've actually done it, you'll already know it. Okay. Now, some projects might be very old projects, right? Like you worked like maybe 1 year ago and somebody's asking a question. So in such cases, you must still prepare and go for the interview, right? So you must still look at all these points. Is the problem clearly explainable? What is the data? What is the model choice? Correct. So somebody again in one of these projects, they used PyTorch, right? Um, yeah, here. So for the brain tumor detection is the bottom. They use the end-to-end CNN model using PyTorch, right? Now I asked a question: why did you use PyTorch? Why did you not use TensorFlow or Keras? Correct. Now that person didn't have an answer, right? He said, "I just use PyTorch because he said I don't have an answer. That's it." So that's not impressive, right? Because I want you to know what are the model choices. Why did you do this? Why did you not do that? Correct. So you should know it. You should know what are the options, alternatives. Okay. So that's the second point. The third point is, did you own the project or did you just contribute to it? Correct. So I'm also interested in knowing if um yeah, can you go on mute, please? Whoever. Yeah, can you just go on mute, please? Yeah. So, did you own the project or just contribute? I want to know if how what is the role in that project? Okay. So, if it is like a 25-member team and you just did the data pre-processing part of it, right? Or did you actually train the model, or did you actually build the model? Did you actually validate it? Did you deploy it? What is it? What stage of it have you done? Correct. I want to know that, right? So if you have sometimes when you interview and people will say, I really don't know that because I was not part of that. Okay. um, Typically way I look at it, unless it is totally not related to the position, like for example, if you are going for data science project position and um, the project is for that, the entire project is data science project, you should know every part of it. Correct. You might not have worked on it, but you should know it, right? If it is an SD related work or related to deployment or DevOps, right? That's okay. You can say, there was a separate team for that. But if it is related to data science, then you should know every part of the project, even if you have worked on part of the project, right? Just a small part you have worked on it, that's fine, right? But you should still be able to understand what's going on everywhere else in the project with related to data science. Okay. So typically you should own the project. Like again, we look for who is owning the project, because that gives me a good sense of the fact that you are someone who can take projects, own projects and do it, right? Rather than somebody just telling you what to do and you just want to take a small piece of it and do it, right? Because that also, I don't know if they only told you and you did it or whether you thought on your own and did it, right? So there's a difference. No, but again, don't bluff this, right? If you've really led the project, you say that. If you're not, say that. That's fine. Okay, but try to know what's happening in other areas of the project. Cannot simply say, I don't know, right? Like I said, unless it is if it is not related, that's different. But otherwise, you should be able to know, right? Uh, we generally give good points for those who own projects end to end, right? That is always a plus. So, can you measure success and impact, right? So, the other thing is also most important is uh, how do you measure the success and impact, right? So, most of the projects, like if you see again, if you see the project that I took over here, right? So it talks about you know again, it's not very clear exactly. Again, it just says demonstrating NRMSC and R2 square, right? R square. But what is the kind of outcome that I'm getting out of it? Correct. So it should be clear, right? What is coming out of it? What have you achieved out of it, right? And how are you measuring that, right? So you should also be able to say, okay, we built a model which could predict the temperature with a whatever 97% accuracy or something like that, right? So what is that measure of success and how do you measure it? That metric is important, right? So if you say, the project was successful, right? That's very vague. You should say the project was successful on so and so metric, right? Like for example, having worked on this project, we were able to reduce the latency from 2 seconds response time to let's say 0.25 like 250 milliseconds, right? So that is the impact. That is a success metric that you're talking about. Latency, correct? Latency is one metric. Now, latency is again in the context of microservices. But again, if you're looking at um, data science perspective, you can also talk about if you're using an ML ops, you can say how many transactions per second are you able to uh, allow your system to process, right? Because of the architecture that you have developed, correct? That's how you measure success, correct? So if you've done something really good, then you need to have the numbers out there, right? And the numbers always speak. So if you have some vague statement like, more, less, and all, it's very vague. You must have quantifiable numbers. So you should be able to say it's 25% increase, right? Or reduce the cost by 30%, right? Or increase allowed 10,000 users to be accessing the system at the same time, right? Something like that. So that's the fourth point. Okay. Now the next point is, are you aware of limitations and next steps? Correct. So you built a project, that's great, but are you aware of what kind of limitations existed when you worked on this project? Okay. For example, can you do everything? You cannot. Correct. So you know that this particular project works to the best, let's say temperature prediction only, whatever is there. Correct. So you should be able to answer questions related to, okay, you analyze this data for, let's say, Andhra Pradesh, right? Now, can you also apply this same model for Chhattisgarh, let's say, correct? So if the question is asked, can you also apply this model for the data coming in from weather stations for temperature in Chhattisgarh, right? You should be able to answer that question, right? How will you answer that question? You can answer that question by asking the right set of follow-on questions, right? So you should be able to say, okay, in Andhra Pradesh, the assumption was that we made was all the data will come from all the weather stations which are giving temperature, right? And the assumption also was that we will get a 1 hourly data from all the stations, correct? And if there was any station that was not giving data, we were also relying on data from private weather stations, right? So these are some of the limitations or constraints which you should be aware of when you're building a model, right? And when you are actually saying, can it go to Chhattisgarh, right? Can you apply in Chhattisgarh? You should ask the same questions. Do these assumptions apply to the data there? Yes or no? If they're not applicable, then you'll say whether your model is works or does not work, correct? So these are the kind of insights which I also look for, because if you really analyze your data well and you had actually done the project, you would ask these questions when you are building it yourself. And you would also, make sure that you are conveying that thoughts when the right question is being asked. Okay. So that's the thing. Okay. Next is the ideal approach to explain your projects. Okay. So far we've seen what are the important aspects, what does the recruiter look for, and all those things. Now we'll look at what is the ideal approach, right, to explain your projects. So before we go there, anybody has any questions? Does anybody want to ask any questions? You can put it on the chat. Are you able to follow me? Is it too fast? Is it too fast? Is it okay? Okay. Are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. You're able to hear me, right? Okay, cool. Uh, let's move on to the next one, the ideal way approach to explain your projects. Okay. So typically when you're, asked to explain a project, typically they ask to explain your most recent project. Okay. So you typically have to talk about the problem statement first, like I mentioned above, right? What is the problem you're solving? The problem I'm solving is, in this project, the problem I'm solving is to predict the temperature of a particular geography based on the historical time series data of uh, temperature provided at a 1 minute interval for the given geography, right? That's what is the problem statement. The approach and data. Now, how did you approach it? You'll say first we try to understand who the key stakeholders were. Where do we get this data from? Uh, what is the quality of the data? Does it have any missing data? If there is missing data, what is the strategy for doing that? How do we complete the entire data, exploratory data analysis in terms of cleansing the data, in terms of finding the missing data and all that? Do we look at data only from the government, or do we look at from data from private weather stations? Okay, and all those things, right? You need to look at that approach, right? So what format also you're going to get is also important, right? Are you getting in CSV, Excel? What is it also important? And basically, that's basically what the data was, right? What is the data that was used as well, right? It's basically temperature data, correct? Now, next is models and tools. So you should also talk about what are the algorithms or frameworks used, right? Now, okay, now, did you use any specific framework algorithms? Did you use any specific frameworks? And why did you use them, right? You should also be able to talk about them. So some of these things, even before the interviewer asks them, it's better that you talk about them, right? So you can say that we used, PyTorch for this one, or we used random forest, right? And the reason why you used random forest is that we felt this model was more suited for the data that we are considering, correct? Or I are using XGBoost. So you could also say, I've not used so and so model because I felt that it might not give the best results in this case. Okay. So results and impact. Okay. Uh, the next thing is results and impacts. What did you achieve? Okay. So what are the metrics? What was the real world value out of that? Correct. So you must be able to talk about, okay, I use this algorithm, and by using this algorithm, I was able to achieve so and so. Okay. And these are the metrics which we observed, and this is the real world value that this project got when I worked on this, right? So, the reflection, right? And you also should say again, what did you learn or what did you improve? Okay. Now, for every project, typically, again, if you have this kind of a structure, it's very structured when you're explaining your thoughts, right? And that will really, and again, when you put it on your resume, also put it in the same manner, correct? Make sure that all of these points are covered in your resume too for that particular project. And more often than not, you don't have to memorize anything. Okay. Uh, if you can memorize it and that's great, but you can look at the resume because you also have access to it. Look at the resume and talk about it also, that's fine. But you can stick to the particular format. Okay. And what do you learn or improve? Again, reflection is something that you don't have to directly talk about it unless asked, but the first 4 points are important. So, what was the problem statement that you had? What was the approach that you used? And what was the data that was used? What are the models and tools that you used? And what are the trade-offs, or what are the pros and cons of using one model over the other? And what were the results and impact, right? What did you achieve? Metrics, right? What are the real world data that you got out of it? Correct. So this basically tells me that you have done a very hands-on, thorough job at what you worked on, right? That really gives me a good feeling about the candidate, right? So typically, like I'll tell you, this other candidate who's kind of uh, working on this project, right? Again, with this project, right? So it's a different, so basically in Coincident or some company they worked on, right? So that candidate was trying to kind of say, they're doing something, uh, you know, e- e- explaining to me, for like 5 minutes, right? See, the total interview is of 30 minutes and you're going to take 15 minutes for only one project, then you have very less time for other projects. So it's better to be clear and explain in a structured manner because interviewers don't have too much of time, right? And if you spend like 10 minutes explaining your project and I still didn't understand what you're trying to say, right? It is not my problem as an interviewer. It is the candidate's problem. Okay, that's how we look at it. Okay, so if you feel that I told for 5 minutes and 10 minutes I explained this, and interviewer is not getting it, interview must be not able to understand. That's still your problem because if the interviewer is not understanding it, that's your problem. That's it. Because the interviewer is the one who takes a call whether they take you in or not. Okay, so it's your responsibility to explain it clearly in terms of what you want to explain, right? Uh, that's always a gold metric, right? So And a lot of times interviews are not looking at what exactly you did, right? Because it's okay. See, nowadays everybody can do projects using Claude, ChatGPT and all, right? They're looking at, are you clear about what you're trying to do? Are you clear about how you're doing it? And are you able to communicate whatever you're trying to do in a clear manner? Correct? Are you able to articulate whether the metrics you have achieved are what you wanted to achieve and those kind of things? Okay, so that's important, and that's why the first 4 points are important. Of course, the last point is very rarely asked, but if you already have the data points for that, just keep them ready. That's about it. Okay. Um, yeah, so I think Mitra has a question. Mitra saying, could you please tell us the whole scope of projects for fresher level that interviewers expect? So one of the things, Mitra, is again, if you see this particular resume is of a fresher, right? A college student, right? Pretty much. Even this one is of a college student only. So you don't need complex projects. Okay. So sometimes people think they put these complex projects, people will be impressed, right? Quantum reservoir framework and all this stuff, not needed, right? Nobody needs. Um, this person, for example, has this done simple logistic regression model, correct? That's okay, right? You have a simple ML model in which you have solved a problem in a very nice manner, a real world problem in a very nice manner. That is a lot better than having some fancy project which you also don't know and you're not able to explain also, right? No use, right? Nobody is looking for very complex projects, no need of even advanced transformers. In fact, even this person has done end-to-end CNN model using Python. It's not bad, right? See, if you have done it, put it good, right? Some of these people are non-computer science students, so they try to put it there because they feel this a better chance of getting conversion. It is good, right? If you are there, if you have that level of skills, put that in. But nobody expects for a fresher, especially college students, to know advanced stuff. Okay, simple concepts, simple machine learning models. If you have done, you was some project on XGBoost to solve some problem, right? Some random forest to solve some problem, logistic regression to solve some problem. You know the difference between classification problems and what is supervised training, unsupervised training. Or these basics. That's good enough, right? Most often than not. But again, if you are someone who is really interested, gone really deep into it, and put in those kind of projects, great. There's nothing to stop, nothing stopping you. Most of the times, people look for Python developers, and with obviously the ability to know different models and understand the models and know the trade-offs. Why this model versus that model, right? And if you have that kind of knowledge, it's more than enough for freshers, right? But if the opportunity is well paying, they're looking for high level of skill, that's then obviously you'll need much more big projects like these. Like this person has kept brain tumor detection. And a lot of times I see people putting in a lot of complex projects just by taking from ChatGPT and just put it in. Correct. So if you ask a little bit deeper questions, they don't know answers. They don't have the concepts. So if you don't have concepts, no point, right? It's a waste of your time, waste of the interviewer's time. So put projects that are simple, no problem, but don't make it too simple, like that petal classifier problem that you see you know in most YouTube projects, right? Don't do so. Very simple. Also keep this interesting, something fresh, something that you have solved as a real world problem. Okay. So I think we are done. Ideal way to explain the projects, how to stand out, right? So one of the things is I interview so many people, right? So typically, if you look at an interview, like, we receive a lot of resumes, right? And a lot of candidates obviously put like a lot of fancy stuff on their resumes. So how do we distinguish, right? Who is good and who's not so good? How can we make a segregation, right? So one thing is again showing dashboards, charts, or demos, right? Visualize the results, what you have done. So typically, I give brownie points for people who can show me some project that they have done as a link, right? You put a link to that, I open the project and I see it. That's great. Okay. So actually, I will. So again, in my LinkedIn, I'll just show one project, okay, which I want you people to have a look at, right? So if you, so the reason why I talk about this is, uh, so there is a project I did long back called Hybrid Rack. So we prepared a video on that. Let me open that project. And I'll tell you why it makes sense. So you can also showcase your video like that if you have done. So where is the thing go? Yeah, yeah, this project. Okay. So this is a hybrid rack project where I have a video where I talk about how we have done table rack on this, right? So in this project, I have called out what all we have done, who are the technical contributors, what is the problem that's solved, where can you find the code, right, and how you can actually try it out. Okay, so when you click on this, you can actually see the project is deployed and you can see it here, correct? So on your resume you can put a link directly for this, correct, and I click on it and I come here, it gives a lot of confidence. Okay, so where I'm coming from is you should also demonstrate projects which you deploy. A lot of people don't deploy, they just give to GitHub, correct? So I don't, what will I do with GitHub, right? I don't even know if you only did it, right? I don't know if it's working or not, right? What will I do with GitHub? Show me a real deployed project, right? And more often than not, like even this project which is there here, it has a chatbot. You can actually run something here, right? I'm not going to run it, but I'm getting that confidence that you have done the project, right? So that's important. So quantify impact, right? Again, you should quantify impact. Like what is the benefit of it, right? For example, this table rack project, if you actually, again, there's a cold start involved, that's why it will not run immediately, but it will actually show you the difference between the traditional rack versus hybrid rack, what we built, correct? Uh, it can connect to business value, business or user value. Can you explain that to me? Like how does this translate into a business value? Who is getting benefited out of this and how are they getting benefit? So if you can do that, then that's great. And most importantly, if you want to stand out, try explain to non-technical audience, right? So if you know somebody who's a non-technical and try to explain to them, then you can explain to anyone, correct? So so that ways it becomes easy and you build your confidence that you can clarify to anyone. Okay. So now some I'll cover some not to do common mistakes. Okay, so again most of what I have covered are what to do, and obviously if you don't cover those, they are not to do only. Okay, so here what we are doing is do not dump technical jargon without context. Okay, so typically what people do, like I said, that quantum thing, they just dump something without any context, without any meaning. Don't show code, just show code. Some people just try to put some link to GitHub. That is what I'm talking about, GitHub, right? They just put a link to GitHub, I open it up and I see some code. What do I do with it? How can I analyze it? So show outcomes. Taking credit for a team project without clarity. This is exactly what I talk about when I said, are you doing the entire project or are you part of it? Right? So if you're a part of it, say that you're a part of it. That's okay. Right? But if you are taking credit for the team project without being a team lead on that, then they will easily get caught. So don't do that. Okay. So ignoring limitations or ethical issues. Okay. So sometimes what people do is they're working in a company and they share that company code, right? It's ethically wrong, right? You cannot share your company code because it is confidential, right? So you must show some similar kind of project, right? If you have, right? Or dummy data, that's important. Or being vague about your role. Don't be vague about the role you have done. Like, you say that you have done data engineering, but then you're suddenly talking about, graphs and charts and all those kind of stuff or analytics kind of work. So they're both different, right? So be clear what is your role and make sure you're communicating as such. Okay. So next, what I'm going to do is there are 3 points I wanted to share before we close. So do not mention unknown topics, right? So this is what I mentioned, like, over here, dumping technical jargon without context. So this person has mentioned, balance 93% balancing precision and recall to handle class imbalance. Okay. So I asked the candidate how is he handling class imbalance? Okay. The candidate was not able to explain. I asked, do you know class imbalance? Candidate does not know class imbalance. So I said, why did you put it in your resume? Right. So no clue. Right. So don't do that. If you do that, red flag directly out of the interview. Right. Because if you don't know what's on your resume, then why are you even in the interview in the first place? Correct. So this is one. Do not mention unknown topics. No need of fancy projects. This is what I told before also. Don't put very hi-fi sounding projects. Nobody's impressed. You can put it if you can defend it. Correct. If you cannot defend it, don't put it. Okay. No need of fancy projects. Put simple projects where you solve a good problem and you can justify it. Then do not just show GitHub repo. This is also what I said, right? For example, this RAG project that this candidate has done, if the candidate can showcase it to me, Then I ask specific questions on that. Okay, if you use LangChain, okay, did you use LangGraph? Why did you not use LangGraph? Or instead of LangChain, could you have considered some other framework? I ask more questions, correct? So show some real world deployed projects if possible. And that always helps. Okay. So these are the kind of mistakes to avoid, and of course, the rest of the stuff what I talked about are what is required for you to kind of do, correct? So anyhow, this PPT also we will get it. So yeah, pretty much that's it for today. If you have any questions, I can take. We still have 3 minutes on the clock. If anybody has any questions to ask, I can take, or else I think we are done. I think it's 7:30. Yeah. Okay, Vaishnav, is it all? Okay. Thanks everyone. Uh, Vaishnav, are you there? Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for your time. Take care.